There's a reason why Breaking Bad opens with a frantic man in his underwear wearing a gas mask, driving an RV through the desert. If they had started that show with him just grading chemistry papers in like a high school classroom, half the audience would have tuned out immediately. Instead, they used a technique that creates an instant narrative puzzle that your brain is desperate to solve. My name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a fantasy author and a huge storytelling nerd. I previously spent 3 years working with Kindlepreneur, one of the biggest sites for author education. But honestly, I created this channel just to have an excuse to study story mechanics like this one. Today, we are talking about in medias res. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Literally into the middle of things. It is the most effective way to grab a reader by the throat on page 1, but if you do it wrong, you're just going to confuse all of the readers. And I'm currently on a mission to cover every major story structure out there, so if there's a specific one that you want to see next, let me know in the comments. But for now, let's drop right into the action. The biggest misconception about in medias res is that it just means starting with an action scene. And if that were true, every Michael Bay movie would be a masterclass in literature, and we all know that that's not the case. It isn't just about explosions or high-speed chases happening on page 1. It is more about withholding the context to create a psychological information gap. When you start a story conventionally, you usually get the ordinary world. Meet the protagonist, get to know their ordinary world, and you learn about their job, and eventually something happens. And that's safe, and it's also often boring. In medias res tosses the reader into a situation that is already deteriorating. It bypasses the setup and forces the audience to play catch-up. This creates a specific cognitive effect known as a narrative puzzle. Your brain sees a guy in his underwear driving an RV away from sirens and immediately asks, how did we get here and what happens next? You are no longer a passive observer waiting for the plot to start. You are an active participant trying to solve the riddle of the current scene. Scientific research into narrative processing shows that this actually activates problem-solving regions of the brain. You aren't just watching, you're now theorizing. You're doing more than watching at this point. You're actually theorizing and engaging with the book itself. The tricky part is that you can't just stay in that high octane moment forever. You have to backfill the information eventually, and that is where this structure comes in that I'm going to talk to you about today. Now keep in mind, this uses in medias res in the sense that is showing a scene that happens later in the plot, but sometimes in medias res can just be, it just drops you at the beginning of the plot in some interesting situation like in Star Wars, where you don't really know what's going on and you kind of figure it out later. In this case, we're going to actually be flashing forward and then going from there. Now, if you are discovering writer or someone that writes by the seat of their pants without an outline, you might not enjoy this particular structure because it requires you to know exactly where you are going from start to finish, or at least very close to it. But using an in medias res framework like this one, we can break down the structure into distinct beats to make this less of a prologue and more of a systematic way of organizing time. Now, beat 1 is the climax hook. This involves dropping the reader right into the middle of the story's climax or a major crisis point, and this is the moment where the stakes are highest. The goal here is to offer tantalizing details that provoke curiosity, but, and this is crucial, you do not resolve the scene yet. For this, we're going to look at the movie Underworld. It opens on a dark, rainy city with a woman named Celine narrating her thoughts on a centuries-old war between vampires and lycans. We don't see the origin of the war, we don't see her training, we drop in right as she is tracking 2 lycans into a subway station, and a gunfight erupts immediately. We have zero context for why these specific lycans are chasing a human man, or why the vampires are hunting them right now. We just know it's violent, it's fast, and the tactical situation is rather messy. The opening scene ends with the questions like, why were they chasing that guy and what is going on with the war? The climax hook works because it serves as a promise. It tells the readers to stick with me through the quiet parts because this is where we are heading. Now, beat number 2 is the exposition and backfill. This is admittedly the hardest part of the structure to write. Once you have hooked the reader with that intense opening, you have to hit the brakes. You need to explain who these people are and why they were shooting at each other. And if you just dump 5 pages of history here, you will kill the momentum that you just built. And the exposition needs to be filled in gradually using specific tools. For instance, we have flashbacks showing the events leading up to the crisis. Dialogue where characters are discussing the past naturally, although it's easy to mess that one up. Or time jumps where you explicitly state like 2 weeks earlier or something like that. In our Underworld example, after the subway shootout, the story slows down. We go back to the vampire mansion. We see Celine trying to convince her superiors that the lycans are organized. We get the political intrigue. We learn about the hierarchy patriarchy. And this is all necessary information that would have been incredibly boring if we hadn't just seen Celine dual-wielding pistols in a subway station. The key here is to distribute the information. You don't give the reader the whole history lesson at once. Instead, you just give them enough to understand the next scene. You are keeping the tension rising even while looking backward, and you want the reader to understand the dire situation of the opening beat, but you peel back the layers slowly. And by the way, if you'd like to learn about how to use AI as an author-led productivity tool to help you write 12 plus books a year easily, and perhaps more, and without compromising your creativity or ethics, please check out the Story Hacker Gold Group linked down below. So beat number 3 is the rising action. Now that you've established the baseline, you move into this rising action. This is the timeline that leads the protagonist specifically toward that opening scene. Every challenge they face here should make that opening image make a little bit more sense. In Underworld, for instance, we see the Lycans' plan unfolding. We learn they are hunting a guy named Michael Corvin, and we see the capture of Singe the scientist. Again, I'm probably mispronouncing some of these names. We see the betrayal by Craven. All of these plot points are the bricks that build the road to the opening scene. We start to understand why the war is dangerous, and we realize that the Lycans aren't just mindless beasts, they are genetically engineering a hybrid. This section is vital because it recontextualizes the opening. When we first saw the subway fight, it just looked like a turf war. By the time we get back to the equivalent point in the timeline, we realize it's actually a desperate attempt to stop a biological evolution that could wipe out the vampire species. The action is the same, but the meaning has changed. Now, beat number 4 is the climax proper. Naturally, the story eventually catches up to the timeline of the opening scene, but you don't just replay the opening scene and end the book. You have to go through it. The climax beat brings the reader back to that specific opening moment, resolving that cliffhanger and then pushing into the resolution. And this is the turning point, the fallout from that moment that changes the protagonist's perspective forever. In Underworld, the narrative loops back. We get the revelation that the war started because the vampire leader, Victor, killed his own daughter for loving a Lycan. The climax is more than a physical fight. It's the emotional revelation that comes with it. Celine realizes everything she believed in the opening monologue was a lie, and the structure forces the character to hit their darkest moment. If you execute this correctly, the reader feels a sense of completion because the puzzle pieces finally snap together. Which leads to beat number 5, which is the falling action and resolution. Once the timeline has synced up and the true climax has occurred, you have the aftermath, and this explores the consequences. If the protagonist survived the in medias res opening, who is chasing them now and what did they lose? Celine kills Victor. She saves Michael. She is now an outcast. The resolution frames her as a hunted woman, setting up the sequel. The ordinary world she started in is gone, replaced by a new, more dangerous reality. Now, we often think of this non-linear type of storytelling as a modern invention, sometimes popularized by gritty crime dramas or Christopher Nolan films. But this technique is actually quite ancient. It is arguably one of the oldest storytelling tricks in human history. The term in medias res comes from the Roman poet Horace, who wrote Ars Poetica around 13 BCE. Horace was essentially the first person to write a how-to guide for writers. He famously advised the epic poet not to begin the story ab ovo, which implies from the egg. He was referencing the myth of the Trojan War. If you want to tell the story of the Trojan War, you don't start with Helen's birth, hatching from an egg, because Greek mythology is weird. You don't even start with the beginning of the war. Homer knew this hundreds of years before Horace gave it a name. The Iliad does not start with the declaration of war. It starts 9 years into the siege of Troy. We drop in right in the middle of an argument between Achilles and Agamemnon. We don't even know why they are there or the full history of the conflict yet. Homer trusts the audience to figure it out over time. The Odyssey pulls the same move. When the story opens, Odysseus isn't leaving Troy. He is already 10 years into his journey home, trapped on an island by the goddess Calypso. All of that famous stuff, the Cyclops, the Sirens, and all of the other stories is told in flashbacks later in the text. Virgil copied this for the Aeneid. Dante's Divine Comedy essentially opens in the middle of a midlife crisis. Milton's Paradise Lost opens with Satan already falling from heaven rather than showing the rebellion first. Why did all of these classic heavyweights use this method? Because they understood that chronologically life is long and often dull. Significance usually happens somewhere in the middle. Now today you see this everywhere. It is the standard for crime fiction. For example, Lee Child's Killing Floor opens with Jack Reacher getting arrested in a diner. We don't see him arrive in town. We don't see the murder. We see the gun in his face and it's an immediate hook. In cinema, Saving Private Ryan is a brutal example. We drop into the boats on D-Day, no briefing room, no training montage, just the shaking hands of a soldier in the ramp dropping. The context of the mission, which is saving one specific guy named Ryan, doesn't come until the dust has settled. However, there is a danger here, and a trap that many new writers fall into. If you drop a reader into a chaotic battle with characters that they don't know, there is a high chance that they just won't care. Action without emotional connection is just noise. If I see a guy fighting a dragon on page 1, that's cool, I guess, but if I don't know who he is or why he's fighting the dragon, I'm just not worried about him dying. The cold open, or in medias res opening, must contain the seeds of the character's personality. In the Breaking Bad pilot, we don't actually see any kind of car chase. We see Walter White recording a video message to his family. We see his desperation and his love for them. That anchors the chaos. And if you write a scene that is just people punching each other, you have failed the structure. The middle of things implies that the things actually matter. Another pitfall is the cheating teaser. This happens when an author puts a flash forward scene at the beginning just to have some action, but that scene has almost no relevance to the actual plot, or it's some kind of dream sequence or something like that. Do not do this. The audience will feel manipulated. The opening scene must be causally connected to the rest of the book. Now, cognitive science backs up why Horace and Homer were actually right. We are wired to close loops. When you present an effect without a cause, like a dead body on a wedding day in Lucy Foley's The Guest List, the brain produces dopamine in anticipation of the solution. This narrative momentum allows you to get away with exposition that would otherwise be boring. If I start a book describing the history of a magical kingdom, for example, you might fall asleep. But if I start the book with the kingdom burning down and then tell you the history of what is being lost, you will read the history to understand the destruction. By that, you are buying yourself narrative real estate. You are using the curiosity generated by the opening to pay for the setup required to make the ending land. So if you are struggling with a boring opening, try cutting the first couple chapters. See what happens if you start when the knife is already at your protagonist's throat. And if you are serious about mastering these structures and turning that into a sustainable career, you should come hang out with us in the Story Hacker Gold group, where we are focused on taking these concepts and applying modern tools to execute them efficiently. Link to that down below, and I'll see you in the next video.